This video is for non-harmonic tones, and we went over them in my little introduction. So here's figure 5.12. There's a passing tone going down, a passing tone going up, a neighbor tone going down, a neighbor tone going up, escape tone, up a step, down a skip. Appoggiatura going skip first, resolving by step. A suspension, the note is prepared, and with the retardation, the only difference is, well, there's probably more than one difference, but the resolves upward. Anticipation. Okay, that was the simple part. The most important distinction between these different non-harmonic tones is whether or not they occur on the beat when they're called accented or off the beat when they're called unaccented. If they're on the beat, they're much stronger and create a powerful emotional impact, which is the whole point of music anyway. Whereas if they're off the beat, they can almost pass unnoticed and they just are smoothing out melodic lines. And you're learning about this because you're going to be composing melodies someday soon, and you want to know when you might like to use some non-harmonic tones and how you might like to use them. So these are all going to be examples, figure 5.13, of unaccented passing tones. And here's some unaccented neighbor tones. Escape tones are unaccented because obviously you're not going to escape too well if people are noticing you. So up a step, down a skip. Anticipations means that the non-harmonic tone is the anticipatory note that anticipates the same note appearing in the next chord as a harmonic tone. And here's an example. Somebody went to the trouble of finding a Handel minuet that uses all of them. A neighbor tone, an escape tone, a passing tone, and an anticipation. Whoop, just kidding, I'll play the right notes. Then you get accented non-harmonic tones, and you can have accented passing tones. There's a little more feeling of leaning going on. And then accented neighbor tones, same thing, the just feeling of musical leaning. A feeling of pathos or longing, it's a good thing to put your passing or neighbor tones on the beat. So here, I'll try to sing this. Just kidding. Okay, I'll play it. Nobody wants to hear me sing. Not without practicing. Alright, figure 5.21. A suspension only happens as an accented non-harmonic tone, because what would be the point of going through all that trouble if you weren't going to be accented? So you're going to have the note in the chord. The chord tone is going to be the same note as the suspended notes, but in the next chord it's not going to be a chord tone, and then it resolves to a chord tone. So figure 5.22, here's the preparation. Then in this next chord, instead of going from here to here, they go, let's hang on to that note for a little while and then resolve it. And because that is the interval of a ninth above the bass, and that's the interval of an eighth above the bass, that's a 9/8 suspension. Here we are. They could have just gone. I do that? Hold on to that G, and then resolve it. And because of the intervals, that is a 7/6 suspension. Could have been just a nice normal chord progression, but no! Hold on to the A, and then resolve it. That's a 4/3 suspension. You can also have a suspension in the bass. Those are a nightmare. And that goes from a third to a second, resolving to another third. That's a 2/3 suspension. So those might be a little harder to find. You have to work a little harder at that one. And then here, your suspension only happens between two voices. Even in 4-voice writing, you can ignore all the other voices. Just pay attention to the you have to look for the non-harmonic tone and then figure out what it is in relation to the bass. So here's an example by Bach. Here the middle C is getting prepared because it belongs in this chord. And now it's going to hold over and resolve to a chord tone. So in simplest terms, that's a 4th, resolving to a 3rd. Here's another Bach. Lots of Bach going on here. So that chord tone gets held over, suspended as it were, and resolves then later. And so there's another 4/3 suspension. You can have two of them at the same time because life is not complicated enough. In which case, that's a 9/8 suspension and a 4/3 suspension. I'm not sure that we're going to test on anything like that. And then you can have decorated ones. There's a 4/2/3 suspension. Yeah. Here is a whole chain of suspensions. And here's one with the changing bass line. Well, that's exciting. All right, so that's enough of suspensions. We will only really test on the more obvious ones, although you won't feel like they're very obvious. A retardation is a non-harmonic tone like a suspension, looks like a suspension, feels like a suspension, but it's a retardation because it resolves up instead of down. The Appoggiatura is a non-harmonic tone that is approached by a skip and resolved by a step, not to be confused with the escape tone, which is approached by a step and resolved by a skip. So Appoggiaturas are very popular. See, there's a skip. Doesn't have to be any particular size skip, as long as it's a skip, but it has to resolve by a step. The Haydn Piano Sonata excerpt that follows includes a suspension, an appoggiatura, and a retardation. And although the retardation in figure 5.29 looks similar to a grace note, performance practice dictates that the retardation be performed on beat 1, not before the beat. And oftentimes they would write things that way so that you would perform it in a particular way, because if they didn't write it that way, people might do something else. Here's a suspension, a skip resolving by step. And when you have that, by the way, pianists, when you have that on a dotted half note, it gets 2 counts. Although in many piano editions, it'll be shown as 1 count, but it's supposed to be 2 counts. This is what happens when you take Baroque performance practice class. Accented versus unaccented, I don't know why they have to be verses. It's just showing you the difference that the neighbor tones that are not accented add interest and smooth things out, but the ones that are accented have a little more dramatic effect. So, unaccented neighbor tone, unaccented passing tone, unaccented passing tone, another one. It's very nice, lovely. But here's going to be an accented passing tone, accented suspension, accented passing tone, and then some unaccented ones. So when you're composing your own pieces, think about that. Do you want the drama of an accented non-harmonic tone, or do you want the smoothly subtleness of the unaccented ones? Oh, and you can have some non-harmonic tones that have more than 3 pitches. Successive passing tones, changing tones, and the pedal tone. Successive passing tones, they're not hard to see. That's just 2 passing tones in a row. There's an unaccented one followed by an accented one. Changing tones are double neighbor tones. And pedal tones are those things. They're not hard to find either, pedal tones. Here's passing tones, changing tones, a pedal tone in a, what's his first name? Walter. Well, probably Johann Gottfried or something like that. Ooh, I'm not going to try to play that. I am, so good luck to Mead. Accent passing tone, accent passing tone. Oh, just treble clef. Here comes the pedal tone. Changing tones. Yes. You might want to look that up on YouTube and listen to how it's really supposed to sound. So here's a summary. And here's things you can do to practice. So read all of that, and then we'll start looking at the videos with the homework.